So if you're watching this, perhaps you've had one of those moments where the mind quietens, everything seems to dissolve, peace arises, freedom feels very visceral and real. And the confines of this bone and flesh-bound body, wrapped in skin, housing thoughts and feelings, preferences, dislikes, likes, moving through a world, seems to all loosen, soften, and all that's left is being here and now. And perhaps if you've had this moment, this realizing, you may have noticed how quickly one contracts back into the typical everyday navigating of life. But upon reflection, it'll become clear that the place that you landed at, that you arrived at, wasn't really an arrival at all. It wasn't something you gained or attained. That peace, that naked, pure being is always here. It's always with us. In some sense, it is us. We just depart from it. We move away from it in all sorts of ways. Through patterns of mind, ingrained tendencies, strong visualizations. All of these take us away from this pure, boundless, limitless, endless, naked, pure being. In Buddhism, they call these tendencies, these departure points away from pure being, Samskaras. In the Vedas, they have another term, they call them Vasanas, tendencies, habits of the mind. A nice analogy for this is the YouTube sidebar. So while you're watching a video in YouTube, there is a selection of videos in the sidebar alongside it. And these videos have been carefully selected using an algorithm that models all your prior activity, understanding what engaged you, what activated you, what tugged on your attention and got you to watch. And based on that information, has selected the videos that you're most likely to engage with next. The sidebar of the mind, or the sidebar of the Vasanas, works in a similar way. The mind throws up these patterns, these thought forms. And the more we're identified with these forms, the more emotionally charged they are. And the more difficult they are then to resist getting pulled, getting tugged, logging into them, getting captivated and pulled away into their stories. And so the question then is, how do we loosen the grip of these vasanas, of these tendencies? What can we do to relieve ourselves of these patterns as we recognize that our being is always here? It's not something we need to seek or that is sought, that we arrive at. And that these patterns, these movements, these deeply ingrained grooves are the things that pull us away from our peace, from our joy, from our happiness. That those are inherent within us. They're not based on some environmental worldly conditions. This should be obvious by now in our stage of humanity, seeing people go through countless cycles of fame and riches and all sorts of other acquisitions, and still suffer from deprivation, anxiety, depression, all sorts of other tortures of the mind. It should be obvious by now that pursuits of the world lead nowhere. They take us on these wild goose chases. And all of that, in fact, is the movement of the Vasanas, of these tendencies. And of course, every time we give into them, we feed them, we strengthen the identification with them, and it becomes more difficult to resolve. So perhaps in a future video, I will share a few practical ways that we can loosen the grip of these vasanas, of these mental habits, these tendencies, these thought forms that pull us away from this pure naked being that is the source of our happiness, our joy, our peace, our freedom, of love, beauty, the very essence of the now, the richness of the now.